So doing that. And then we'll just get started. So just like usual, we will start by talking about last week's practice exercise. We'll do some role play. And then by the end, we'll get into next week's exercise. There is one addition I want to make to our schedule, which is just to mention the mock interviews that we did last time, or that you got your feedback about a week ago. Hi, Katie. So what I wanted to point out for the mock interviews, and then of course, if anyone has any questions, obviously feel free to ask, even if I don't bring it up. But so when you got your feedback, you would have gotten a letter, like a little message, and it would have given you a level, right? And so I wanted to tell you a little bit about the levels. So the first level, actually, I'll have a slide, so I might as well just use my slide instead of just talking about it. Give me one sec. Clean up on the right screen. 22, and here we go. There we go. Okay, so the first of the levels, is over here on the left, practitioner centered. So this is where the practitioner, that's you in this case, it tends to be doing most of the talking in the conversation, giving lots of information, and then the client is pretty passive, right? They answer questions when they're asked, but they're kind of just on the quiet side or the receiving side. So practitioner centered plus, that's sort of a step up. It's still practitioner centered. So this practitioner is still doing most of the talking, most of the work, but they're doing some other things. Like maybe they ask permission before they give information, or maybe they are sort of collaborative in their conversation. They talk about, it's up to you. And those are all things that obviously we want to encourage. And they may even ask for change talk, like they may ask a question that gets some change talk. But it's still mostly the practitioner sort of doing the heavy lifting. Then we get to client-centered. And this is when things start to really shift. The client will do most of the talking, or at least much more. They're going to be highly engaged. And the practitioner, to really be client-centered, you actually have to be using reflective listening, which is today's lesson. So we will get there. But reflective listening is kind of the hallmark of client-centered work. And so yeah. Then from there, right, we get into what in this little schema we call the beginner MI, right, where you're using reflective listening. You are definitely eliciting change talk. The client is highly engaged. And if you're going to give information, you're going to ask for some permission beforehand. And then advanced MIs, all those same things, with still a focus on nurturing and eliciting and nurturing change talk. And in advanced MI, you really start to see the practitioner like sort of intentionally steering where this conversation goes. Like you can feel it. You're like, oh, haha. I see the choices that they're making. So I just wanted to show you, because when you get your feedback, I don't give you the context of it. Like you don't see your level in comparison to the other levels. And so here, I like to share that. So, not there. So depending on where you are, right, where you started, then there's some strategies to focus on. So if you want to move from practitioner-centered to practitioner-centered plus, the cheeseburger will really help, right? Asking permission before giving information. Because in practitioner-centered, you're probably giving a lot of information without permission, so to speak, and then the cheeseburger will really start to shift things. The cheeseburger actually shifts a lot of things, which is kind of a cool aspect of it, because you start using open questions and you start asking them to process information. And so it does a lot of good stuff, but it'll definitely get you to practitioner-centered. If you want to go from practitioner-centered to client-centered, reflective listening. Okay. And then to get from reflective listening to beginner MI, is really about the change talk. And again, you know, change talk sometimes shows up in practitioner centered, it sometimes shows up, but it's when you start to get really intentional about it that we know we're moving into the space of motivational interviewing. Okay, any questions or thoughts on here? I see one typo and then something I'd like to change, but other than that, no. All right, so let's jump back in. And so today we are talking about, and just as a kind of a broad refresher, remember we're focused on the rules, RULES. Can anybody throw in the chat, like at least the first two or any of them that you actually know, but definitely the first two, because hopefully we know those. What do those, you know, the rules is an acronym. So Glenda, I'll try to, you know, I'm glad you're here. Thank you for coming last week. And I'll try to kind of make it all come together for you. Do a little backtracking.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it, Doctor.
Yeah, of course, of course.
Yeah. I just had to play catch up from the week before.
Yeah, and the online stuff.
Yeah.
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 Okay, so okay, we're on it, right? So the R is to resist the urge to solve other people's problems, right? Like we're trying to slow down that urge, right? That quick, like just treat it like a problem, go in with a solution and be done with it, right? We're trying to slow that down so that something more empowering and more lasting and more engaging can happen. And then, yes, Esther, the U, and Caroline, the U is to understand their motivation. So to do that, well, hang on, let me rewind. For the R, to do that, we use the cheeseburger, right? And then for understanding motivation, we're going to use eliciting change talk questions. Okay, so that's what today's lesson was about, using eliciting change talk questions. And so can I ask some people to start with what did you, like, big picture, many of you wrote about it, so thank you for those who reported back. Even if you haven't, I'm curious, what did you learn through this process? You can talk specifically about a particular case or just generally about, you know, observations.
I think for me, resisting the urge is it's just so hard for me. I'm not even gonna lie. It's professionally and personally. Um I'm just so used to being like a problem solver, and I'm realizing like it's a problem a little bit. Like so I'm like, yeah, I'm just realizing like, okay, just like resisting is just very difficult. Like I'm like, just stop. Just like I'm having to be mindful and just tell myself to like fall back and just stop, you know? So for me, that's something that I'm kind of like just struggling with, especially like with our role. And I feel like, you know, I don't know, I guess I'll only speak for myself, but I feel like a community health worker role is, you know, we're being introduced to solve a problem. Like that's the whole gist of it. Like someone is being referred for food insecurity. So it's like, what can I do to solve that problem? But it's so important in getting to know, like, I don't know, just the patient and their perspective on it, and what is, you know, because there's so much more to it. And I think that, yeah, so that's what I'm learning.
So can we use some emojis? And hold on, I want this one, I want that one. And yeah, like that really is, I mean, the awareness about that is huge. Also, the other thing that you bring up, and I don't know if anyone remembers this, it's a very small detail, but in the video that we watched, the Miller video, he talks about that sometimes it's really a shift in how you see your job.
Mhm.
right? And that's true for a lot of people. Like they absolutely feel like it's my job to, you know, do what you're doing, right? Provide resources, like tell them the solutions. Like that's my job. I get paid to do that. And Miller is encouraging us to like, you still have the same job, but you get to think about it differently,
Mhm.
right? Think about what your job is a little differently, even if your job description doesn't change. And frankly, even if your boss doesn't think about your job differently, you have to think about your job differently, it to really maximize engagement and
Right.
motivation and, you know, these other things. So so your
Mhm.
struggle is real, Jasmine. You are, I don't know, you might, well, the other Jasmine is nodding along with you. I was gonna say, even if not in this room, you know, if you don't, you know, depending on other people's experience, like
Mhm.
overall, you know, your experience, you are not alone. Like this
Okay.
is huge, right? Like it's just huge. Um, okay, so I'm curious, and anyone else can chime in. I don't want to keep Jasmine on the hot seat. But Jasmine, you could comment on this because we did the eliciting change talk experiment last week, and I want to hear about that one. And Jasmine was like, sort of in your response, I heard, "Oh, I'm not even thinking about that because I'm just thinking about resisting the writing reflex." So, did it was a how did the eliciting change talk experiment go for others? What'd you learn from it? I will call on people. Caroline.
I I think I kind of want to like talk about the different cultural households.
Okay.
I think eliciting change talk was easy for me when I was in an English speaking household versus a Spanish speaking
Okay.
household. I
Okay.
think the eliciting change talk was very challenging, especially in a Latino household because there's a lot of machismo in there. So it was a lot of change talk. It was hard for me because sometimes the questions would shift. Like they wanted someone to solve their problems, and then it changes to like, I don't need your help. So I think that aspect was very challenging and confusing for me. So it kind of threw me off.
What will you tell us? Give us some more detail about that one because I would love to know. First of all, were you talking to two people?
Yeah, so I was talking
Okay.
to the patient and the spouse. So
Okay.
yeah, that was kind
And
of
somehow when you said machismo, I was like, okay, there's
yeah. Yeah. So last week I just had a lot of needs on getting them assisted with in-home supportive services.
uh,
So like getting them caregiver support. Um, so I did provide a case example
yeah.
about the illicit change talk for the English speaking household,
Okay.
but the Spanish speaking was a different level.
Yeah. I want to hear about that. What happened?
So pretty much I was just talking to the patient. The spouse was there, was listening. And in the beginning, they were really receptive to understanding more about um, about the program. And once I explained the process of like interviewing a caregiver, they were like, "No, I don't want to do nothing with that." And then the spouse was like, "Yeah, we can do that." So there was a lot of back and forth. I think it was overwhelming trying to do the practice example to them. So that's all I can speak on my experience. So I told them, you know what? Let me talk to you again next week, which is this week. So I'm planning to talk to them on Thursday and see what they decided on.
So 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 you tried to use an eliciting change talk question, and what did you ask, and then what did the and is the patient male or or was the spouse male? Just out of curiosity.
Patient is male, yes, spouse is female.
Okay. And what did you ask?
To be honest, I can barely remember. Yes.
That's understandable. Um, but was it so? So there were a couple, not so one of so I was reviewing all the responses today, and and remember, right, the lesson from last week, and Glenda, I'll direct this to you, although I know you were there for part of last week, but just in case you need a refresher, right? So some questions, and obviously this is for everyone really, some questions are elicit change talk, right? So we're going to use big open questions. Some will specifically get change talk, and some will specifically get status quo talk. So if you ask somebody, what concerns do you have, right? What are you going to get? Are you going to get change talk or sustain talk? Change is 1, sustain is 2. Just for, you can use your fingers. You don't have to even type it. Yeah, right? So what concerns do you have is going to get somebody to tell you, oh, I don't want to do interviews. I don't want this. I don't want that. It's too soon, right? You're going to get the no change side of it. So just, and then there are also open questions that are kind of neither change nor sustain, right? They tend to be a little bit off topic, you know, or like just like you're gathering some other information, right? But it's not specifically about the target behavior, the thing you're hoping someone will do. So Caroline, the only reason I ask that, right, is because when you hear status quo talk, oh no, I don't want to interview, I don't want to do that. You should always ask yourself, what did I just say or do that elicited that response? Right? Like and again, that doesn't mean you'll never ask those questions, but it probably was not a change talk question that elicited that response. Okay? So just keep that in mind. So because there are big open questions. So I think there were a couple of posts that had a big open question in the middle of it. And I think that was meant to be the change talk question, but it wasn't, right? It was, one of them was, what concerns do you have? And the other one was, oh, tell me why you're hesitant, right? If you ask someone why they're hesitant, you're gonna get status quo. Again, doesn't mean you never ask, doesn't mean there isn't a role for that. It can be useful, but if your goal is change talk and you're not getting it, and again, how do you know if it's change talk? Very simply, change talk makes you feel hopeful and positive and like the conversation's going where you want it to go. And status quo talk will make you feel stuck, like this conversation is not going where I want it to go. Okay, so, okay, Glenda, you have a question.
Yeah, I have a question. So could status quo be, for example, if the person responds to you and say, no, I don't want to do that.
Mhm.
Could it be that they are expecting you to say, well, okay, I'll do it for you?
Oh, you like they want their community health worker to handle the phone call and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, if they really want you to do it, they better be more clear than that. But yeah, I mean that certainly could be it. They could mean it's not that I don't want the service, it's I don't want to make the phone call for the service. Will you do it? But so certainly, and we'll kind of get into this today. Just the idea that, and this is typically when we talk about reflective listening, if you think of somebody's statement as like an iceberg, right? There's the part that they said, the tip of the iceberg, and then there's meaning behind what they said, right? And when we do reflective listening, ultimately ideally we get to make some guesses about their meaning, right? Not just sticking to exactly what was said, but making sure, obviously, that we're understanding the meaning behind what was said. Because sometimes we use, all of us say things that, that are just the tip of the iceberg or the beginning of a thought, and we don't necessarily get to the, immediately to the full meaning of it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, great question. others, what happened and what did you learn from the experience? And was it positive or negative? Just anything would be great.
I would say mine was a little negative just because the patient wasn't open to any resources right off the bat. The social worker and I went into the room, and I think I tried some change talk to try and understand like what changes, like I think I asked like what changes they've made in the past to like change their housing status or something. And I'm not sure if psych was involved, but he was just saying like he didn't need me to like call the shelter myself for him and just not really do anything. So yeah, I guess I asked that question to like see what the barriers were in the past and like maybe to evoke some type of change or like what his motivators were, but I think it was just the patient in this case, or maybe the question.
So lots of stuff that like so, we're going to watch a video today, and even a very simple question, in this case it's somebody talking about like somebody it's a medical practitioner, they're talking about the guy's weight, and he just says, I simply want to ask you how you feel about it. Okay, big open question. It is not specifically change talk or specifically status quo. It's just like exploring. We don't know what we're going to get until the guy starts talking, right? So in that case, if you ask, what have you tried in the past? So there's something about, so we talked last week about open questions and closed questions, okay? And the definition of a closed question is basically anything that can be answered with yes or no, which that one was not, or anything that can be answered with a specific answer. Like where were you, when did you, how old were you, something like that, or how much, how many, how often. It says, I want specifics from you. So essentially that question, it's technically open, but there's a little bit of that message like, I want to know what you've tried in the past. And here's the problem. So one of the problems with closed questions is they have this little vibe associated with them that you need information to put into your brain, your little calculator, so you can spit out the next information. So tell me what you've already tried so I can figure out what we're going to do. Does that make sense? Does that resonate? Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And so it's a different feeling than just a nice big open question, right? That says like, you could do, well, I was sent here, to help you with housing resources. And, the social worker told me that, she said you're not motivated, you wouldn't say that, but, she told me all this stuff. But really, I just want to hear from you. How are you thinking about this? Like, where are you at with, pursuing housing? And the vibe on that is just so different, right? It's an invitation to talk to a person who doesn't have a super strong agenda, or their agenda is not revealing itself. He knows you haven't, he knows you're there to help, right? But you're also a person who's open and listening and, and being present with him right there in that moment. And so, yeah, there's a lot of nuance to questions, right? And so I think, I don't know, that's just a thought, right? Like maybe a question like that might have not encountered the I know what you're up to and I'm not interested vibe. Like he's like, I know why you're asking, and like you weren't on the same page yet, perhaps. Does that make sense? Yeah, okay. Others, I know from the comments I got, I think, hold on, where's Jasmine? What was your experience like? Positive, negative, neutral?
It was a positive one. I think it was an easy one
Okay.
too. Just because it was a family member. Because I don't have any patients yet, but I pretty much asked my family member,
Oh, you mean
like,
at
hey,
home, your family
yeah,
member? Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
my family member.
Yeah, gotcha.
I was like, oh, I know in the past you had mentioned that you wanted to start going to the gym to be more physically active. And they were like, oh yeah. Um, I did start, but I lost motivation and it's been so hot. Like they were just making excuses, right? They're like, it's been so hot lately, and so I've lost motivation. And I was like, oh, well, what got you motivated in the first place?
Okay.
Like, and they were like, well, I was going like 3 or 4 days a week and it was nice and I felt good. And I really got started because my doctor told me that I need to lose weight, and I have a trip that I want to be in shape for, and I just want to feel more confident. And I was like, oh, that's good. And I was like, oh, I forgot what else I wrote, um, but yeah, essentially I was like, oh, like it sounds like these are really important to you. Like it makes you feel good. It's important because your doctor told you and you want to feel more confident. And they were like, yeah, like those are all like the reasons why. And then they're like, yeah, I think I should, continue it, right? And I was like, yeah, like it's okay if you fall off, like get back up again, try doing it and slowly progress into it. And so yeah, that's pretty much how the conversation went.
Pretty much what it says online. Yeah, okay, so, right, so you said, well, what motivated you in the first place, right? Because this was somebody was already taking action, or at least had been. So that turned into that's an eliciting change talk question, right? Because when you're about to ask a question, you can start to anticipate the answers. And even if you don't know them exactly what they're going to say, if you ask, what got you started in the first place? It's going to be like, my doctor said, or I wanted to look good, or I just was feeling really lazy, I had no energy, whatever. It's going to be change talk. So if you can think, obviously, like, sort of intuit what's going to come out of it, you'll be like, oh, yeah, that's the good stuff, right? I want that stuff. So you started with that, you got that, then you started to reinforce it. So remember, when you hear change talk, you're going to want to start mirroring it back, right? That's how we, reinforce it for somebody. And remember, you might end up being surprised, like that it's hearing themselves is where the power is. So you don't even usually have to like editorialize and add your own stuff and, be, inspiring. It's like just listening to themselves, right? That's where the kind of more important when it comes to somebody else's motivation is hearing themselves. So that was a great example. So thank you. Who else? Leslie, what happened with you? I don't know if you, oh, you did. You posted too.
Yeah, I did post it. So I was working with my patient Maurice to get connected to a community resource agency where they could assist him with eliminating or reducing the share of cost because the patient has had, I guess, bad experience with the state benefits. He wasn't really encouraged or motivated to contact Kim. So just trying to find the root of the problem. Why aren't you motivated? Or why are you hesitant in speaking with Kim? I think that really helped a lot. It gave feedback to why. And as I mentioned, he was just let down by just state government programs in the past. But I think letting him know like you are in control, whether you decide if you want to receive the services or decline them, and then also just asking him open-ended questions. I think that really helped a lot with the patient Maurice. So yeah, it was positive.
Okay. So again, this is one of those examples. So if you, I mentioned that asking status quo talk questions, right? Like, so why are you hesitant, right? Oh, because they let me down, right? Those are all the reasons not to do it again, but it's often really valuable information. So just and we'll see this, I usually bring it up in the last session when I talk about the structure, but typically, if you're hearing a lot of status quo, that's okay. And obviously you're going to listen and you're still gaining something from it as long as the person's talking. But at some point, it's nice to be able to switch the conversation. Once you've heard it, then you can then change the conversation to the good things about it. So that if you start with the negatives and you end with the positives, they're going to be the promises that you'll be moving closer and closer to change. Okay. So again, it's not that you would never listen to that stuff. It's not that there's no value in it. It's just that just be aware that you're in like status quo land and eventually you want to get to change talk land, right? That you want to move through it so that you can get to the change talk. Because that's where the action tends to live. Okay. So just keep that in mind. And open questions can help you do both things, and just not to err on too much on one side. The other thing that I try to encourage is when you hear the barriers, you're gonna want to address them. So that's when you're gonna really need to resist the urge to start trying to solve problems. And again, you can get back to it later. Just don't. It's kind of like taking the bait, right? You ask, oh, why don't you want to do this? And then they start telling you, and then you're like, yeah, but we can help with that. And yeah, but we can help with that. And yeah, but, and they don't end up more motivated. So listen first. Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, I can understand why you'd be feeling that way. Or yeah, that must have been really frustrating. I'm curious, what would be some of the good things? Like if those things weren't an issue, what might come out of doing it? Let them then hear themselves say some of the positives. And then later on you can offer, if you have a solution or something, then you're in better shape to offer it then. Does that make sense? Okay. Diane, anything from you?
Yes, so with illicit change talk, most of my patients have been so far positive.
Cool.
Some of them, they come with confusing feelings of wanting to do it and not wanting to do it. And so that's where I have to, speak with them and have them realize there's a little chance of change. So recently on the post I did was a referral I got from a PCP saying to find out why her sugars are high. And find out what delivery meal she's been receiving because it's from Project Angel Food. And so I reached out to her, I contacted her and asked her what's going on. Your PCP had told you that your sugars are going high. So let's talk more about it. So she stated that she's been trying to follow her medications and her diet, but there's occasional discretions that she has a savory tooth, a sweet tooth as well. And so that's where I come in and just basically listen to her and I just say, yeah, I know you're struggling with and you're having a hard time with your diet, but you're trying to your best to stick to non-trigger foods. And she said, yes, it's hard to be on track. I know these foods can be harm to my health. And so that's where the question I asked, the open-ended question is, what are some of the cons if you continue to have these discussions in your diet, or what would you see differently? 3 months from now if your sugars went down. So that's where I guess her mindset changed. She's like, I know I would, be healthier, more active. I can go more on walks and just be, more happy with her weight and not having to worry about, her sugar levels going up higher. And so, yeah, it's just having them, that changed mindset.
Yeah. So right. So first off, ambivalence, like on the one hand, this, and on the other hand, that. And who was it who just, Jasmine, I think it was you, you just said, you're talking about your family member and then you call them excuses. I always, whenever I hear people use the word excuse, I just think like, I don't know, my heart always goes out to the other person. Like, like we're just like, oh, stop with the excuses. Like we have no patience for it. Like if you say anything that about the other side of the story, it's like labeled, that's an excuse, So it's pretty common. But anyway, so I like to think, both sides of the story, the change talk and the status quo, it's super, super normal because both things are true, right? I do have a sweet tooth, I do love my whatever I love, and I know that, it's bad for my health, right? So anyway, so I just love it when it gets called an excuse because, but it's super, super normal. So we shouldn't hold it against people, right? That is just human nature when we're talking about change. So we want to, create some space for that. So from the get-go, and this is really common, you'll be hearing both change talk and status quo talk, right? The status quo, it's really nice to like see yourself as providing a little empathy, a little, not, you don't have to go overkill here, but like, yeah, that can be hard, yeah, it's hard to give up stuff that you love, things like that. And then, but when you're hearing the change talk, you're like, you've got a different spin to it. It's not just like, you don't want to have empathy for the change talk. You want to be like, just, the mindset's different. You want to acknowledge it and reinforce it and strengthen it. But you don't want to strengthen, I have a sweet tooth, right? You just want to, you want to acknowledge it. You want to be like human and be like, yeah, it's so hard to give up stuff you love, but right, so that's different. You treat the two types of talk differently. Okay. And you can, sometimes you don't even have to ask an eliciting change talk question as long as you're hearing change talk and you're reinforcing it and they're still talking about it, right? So you don't always have to ask specifically for it. Sometimes that's not even necessary. Okay. All right. And I do love, and I think, yeah, like when people bring in autonomy, like it's up to you, it's your choice. Those are all really nice things to say too. Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's leave this unless anybody has another comment or question. Any thoughts that you want to share? Okay. Let's take a look at my little video. I use this. This is actually so Bill Miller is considered the father of motivational interviewing, but the second guy, who again back in the 80s, is a guy named Steve Rolnick. And so this video, Steve Rolnick is in, and it's a quick video. Hold on, I'm getting the screen ready. Share sound. Okay. And so when you're listening to this, you think about at the end of it, I'll ask you kind of overall, what'd you notice? What stood out to you? Think about some of the skills that we've talked about, like emphasizing personal choice or asking permission, things like that, reflective listening, which we haven't quite gotten to, change talk, things like that.
Conversations with.
Well, that's not playing. Hold on. Why would I not hear?
very, very difficult people who
One
were
second,
classified as not at all motivated to change and very resistant to treatment.
Speakers. Apparently, I might not do this today. We might have to role play again.
I can hear it. Is that what you're worried about, the sound?
Oh, yeah.
We can hear it too. Yeah,
Mrs.
we
Smith,
can hear.
that's your medication source.
Yeah, we can hear it
Good.
great.
Blood pressure's a little on the high side.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
I wonder if
I
I
can't hear
could
anything.
raise the subject of your weight.
What?
I wondered if we could spend just a couple of minutes talking about your weight.
You are joking, aren't you? I mean, look, I've made time in my day to come here.
Yeah.
I'm kept in your waiting room for
Yeah.
45 minutes.
Yeah.
It's not acceptable. You know,
Yeah.
if I make an appointment with
Yeah.
a client for 10, I expect them to start at 10, not quarter to 11.
Right, and so you're busy enough. And
Yeah, I've got other things to do. I've got
Yeah.
accounts to do. I've got clients to coming in.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And it wasn't necessarily easy for you to make the time to come down, and you had to wait in the waiting room. And now I raise the subject of weight.
Yeah,
just
I mean,
when you're
okay,
thinking of
fair
going.
enough. I've got to have my blood pressure
Yeah.
medication
Yeah.
changed, but I
Yeah.
really haven't got time to talk about my weight. I mean, you know, I'm aware of my weight, I'm aware of the problems, and I'm also aware of the solutions.
Right.
So I don't really need a discussion. It's just I've got too much to do at the moment, you know?
Right, and so it's been a bit of a rush for you coming in.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry about the wait in the waiting
Well,
room.
it's bad form, you know?
Yeah, yeah, that's not easy for you because you'd like to go really soon, and here I am asking you to spend just a couple of minutes with me.
Yeah, but basically I've got things to do. I've got to
Yeah.
get back to the office. I've got a pile of work that
Yeah.
I've got to deal with.
Yep.
And every moment out of my day
Yeah.
means I have to work in the evening or
Yeah.
weekends.
It
you know.
counts.
Or when you're self-employed, you haven't got a choice,
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. It's up to you. Just a couple of minutes.
Well, I'm here now, so yeah, okay, if it's a couple of minutes, yeah?
I promise.
Okay,
promise.
because I really must get on.
I want to simply ask you how you feel about it.
About what? Losing weight? Well, obviously, I want to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't? I mean, I'm aware that I'm over my balance weight, but I know that it's causing problems. I mean, obviously, I get out of breath if I have to do something a bit hurry, and I realise that I'm on this blood pressure,
Right.
and maybe that's probably contributing to it.
Right. So you can see the links between your weight and your health, and you'd like things to be.
Yeah,
a
I
bit
mean,
better.
there are other things, but I mean, yeah, the weight is something I would like to get hold of, get a handle on. Yeah.
You'd like to if you could.
Yeah, I mean, I know the theories of a bit of exercise on a regular basis, a balanced diet, but unfortunately, because of my lifestyle, because of being self-employed as an accountant, it's finding the time to exercise, but also finding the time to sort of think, okay, I'm going to go shopping for this, that, and the other, and then
Yeah.
I'm going to prepare a meal.
Yeah.
With me, it's very often
Ready meals and that sort of thing.
yeah, food on the run, you know,
Okay, yeah.
grazing.
Let me see if I can summarize what you've said, and then we'll see what next. You lead a busy life.
Yeah.
You run a business and you've got a lot to do.
Yeah.
You're aware of the links between your health and your weight, and you are concerned to some extent about that. And ideally, it sounds like you'd like to do something about it. It's just that your life is busy and rushed, and you tend to use convenience foods in order to get the work done.
Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, because of my lifestyle, food is just fuel.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
because I'm juggling all these balls and I don't want to drop any.
I get it. And so if you could fit it in, you would like things to be different, but that's not so easy.
No.
Okay. Can I suggest that you come back and see me in a couple of weeks' time just to chat about this?
Okay, I'm up for that, but it's going to be the same problem of A, finding time,
Right.
and B, if I make an appointment,
Right.
I don't expect to be kept waiting for half an hour or
Exactly.
whatever, because it's...
Exactly. I'll tell you what might be a nice solution is if you come down first appointment, and I give you an appointment at 8:30.
That'd be good.
Then there'll be absolutely no waiting. And the purpose of that visit will be to have a look at how you really feel about how you could move forward and somehow fit in a more healthier lifestyle into the busy work life that you've got?
I'll maybe have a look at my schedules, see whether
Yeah.
anything can be arranged, or I can pass something
Yeah.
on to some, and so that
See
so
if
it's not a wasted interview. So I can come here and say, okay, I've looked at my schedules, I've looked at things,
Good.
whatever.
Good. And see if you can fix it up, and also give some thought to what we've talked about.
Yeah, of course.
Good stuff. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, all the
Sorry I went
best
off a
then.
bit.
A few well-chosen words, a very thoughtful question, can be worth more than many mouthfuls of busy talk.
I was lip reading the whole time. I know the script well enough. I was like, "Huh, I can follow along. Okay, so observations, what'd you notice? What stood out?
Everything is just so amazing to watch him, like right away when the client started talking about all his barriers. If it was me, I'd be like, oh, okay. And like let it go. But the doctor just had this calm to reflect pretty much everything that the patient said. And I love when he said, I simply want to ask you how you feel about it. So just by adding the simply, it takes so much weight to the question. And then he asked about a couple of minutes. It's like, not, I don't want to keep you here 50 minutes or whatever. And he resisted so much to talk about solutions. And he spoke so very little. And he mainly was reflecting, like pretty much he repeated what the client was talking about. And in this ideal conversation, the client was saying everything that he knew, all his barriers, and even his solutions. He was even like agreeing, yeah, well, I can think about what can I do and check my schedule already without even saying, yes, I want to work for it. So I think it's just, I don't know if I could do that.
Awesome. Great observations. Sanjali.
Yeah, just adding to what Esther said, I think he was doing like a lot of active listening and like affirming the patient and saying like, yeah, like you're busy enough, like you had to wait long. And I think like he asked like an open-ended question and was like, okay, like, can you tell me how you feel about your weight? So
Yeah,
that was great.
Caroline.
All very good points. I think the whole session reminded me of usually our patient population, Angeli. So sometimes I feel like just like listening to it was really fantastic, but I feel like there's some wording that needs to be phrased for our patient population because we are focused on fixing the issue right there and then because we pretty much we're in a fast-paced environment, so there's no, oh, we're going to follow up about a PCP appointment when it needs to be addressed that same evening. So, but it was really good to listen in.
Okay, so kind of you're thinking like, what would that look like if there was, if the goal was an action today instead of the goal became, come back and see me again, because you're not going to have that goal. You're going to have a different goal. Okay. Other thoughts? Dalila.
Hi. Yeah, I was like, oh, he's really good at this. I don't know how I would have handled that. I feel like I would have just like been apologizing because he was like mad and be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I had to go through this. But yeah, I really liked how he handled the whole like conversation, and then there was like change talk. Yeah, a little bit, I guess it is a little bit different to our role just because you try to connect them as soon as possible, especially like you don't want them to come back to the hospital and everything. But I did like the whole like, oh, let me give you time to think about it. Which was nice. You know, he wasn't pressuring him. He was giving him time to like, you know, think about his situation a little bit more and like see what he can change. So yeah.
Yeah. Yes, right. So this example, right? He starts off really escalated, right? He's frustrated, he's upset, he's annoyed at the hospital, you know, in this case for being waiting, but that's kind of relatable, right? That somebody might be a little agitated. And really the first part of that conversation is just, you know, a lot of emphasizing, you know, it's up to you, just a couple of minutes, like a lot of giving the guy power, like we don't have to have this conversation. But he also, what I love about the beginning is that he never shies away from the topic, right? Like even when the guy is like, he says, I wonder if I could raise the subject of your weight. And the guy's reaction is like, what? Like he's like just like, whoa. You know, and I've shown this video enough times that a lot of people will say, I would have dropped it right there. You know, that's kind of, Esther, what you kind of were saying, right? That you would have been like, you know, like, and I like to joke, you know, then we go back and we write like, patient was, you know, refused to talk, you know, or we have some interpretation of it. But anyway, but he never drops his agenda, right? He never shies away from it. He just keeps listening. That's the reflective listening, or Sanjali, as you said, the active listening. But right, he keeps mirroring back what he's hearing. Again, not just word for word, you know, but he sort of mirrors back the essence, right? The guy says a whole bunch and he mirrors it back and he says, it counts. You know, like just these 2 words, but that really capture what the guy was saying. And eventually this de-escalates him, right? He's like, okay, just a couple of minutes. Guy's like, yeah, I promise. Okay. So then they get to move forward. Then we hear the first big open question, really the only big open question, right? I simply want to ask you how you feel about it. The guy starts talking. Did you hear change talk? Did you hear sustain talk? What did you hear?
From the
From the
patient?
Yes, yes.
I feel like I heard a lot of sustain because it just kind of felt like yeah, like even though he knows he needs to change because of A, B, and C, his lifestyle just won't allow for it, and he's just not in the space. So it just to me seemed like sustain, but I could be wrong. So that's fine.
So this is I made this. Remember the flowers and the weeds?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really remember what happened when I asked about that, but often those weeds get a lot of attention.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that same thing where, yes, Jasmine, there was sustain talk in there and there was change talk, but sometimes the sustain is louder to us.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
We walk away thinking like, he's not really motivated. But Jasmine, at the end, when he's saying, you know, I'll take a look at my schedule, see if I can move things around. Like, did you still
that was, yeah, then it seemed like he got him on the change side because then he was open to making the change, to discuss change. So I was like, okay,
come back to discuss it, to think about it, to look at a schedule? Like there's a lot of stuff there. And I think to me, that's one of the reasons why, again, if you see it as really normal, like, of course, this guy, I mean, every life, right? Things are the way they are for a reason, you know, of course, and it's actually quite normal. He wants to change, right? Like it's rare that you find somebody who, you know, who has like a health condition who doesn't, if they had a magic wand, they would make it better. You know, like everybody wants change. And then there's all the reasons that things are that way. So definitely we should never hold it against, we shouldn't hold it against people, you know, or attach ourselves too much to their resistance, right? MI says, focus on the flowers. Here, pay attention to those little bits of change talk, and then put your attention there and they will grow. And that's kind of what our the interviewer does in the way that he mirrors back what he's hearing. Not exclusively, but he says things like, you want to if you could. And then he says, but that's not so easy, right? So he's still acknowledging that there's some stain, but he's really trying to reinforce that this guy wants change. And of course he does, right? I mean, like it's pretty natural to want, especially like in this scenario with weight and health stuff, right? People want change. And so we're going to try to reinforce that for them. Were there other comments?
I was just gonna add, like towards the end, I think in the beginning, like he was really doing the reflective listening, but towards the end, he was like, okay, like what I'm hearing is ideally, you would like to change. And then he transitioned and be like, can I suggest that we meet again? So like it was change talk, but like a small step towards that even.
A small one or a big one, like we don't know how big. That might have been a huge step. But yes, when you were saying that, Sanjali, I had a thought. Oh, I think it has already escaped me. Hold on. See if I can get it to come back to me. Oh, I don't remember what it was. It was new though. I love it when I have new thoughts. I have a lot of I do the same thing over and over again. So I have a lot of like old thoughts, but occasionally I have a new thought. It's very exciting.
Okay.
Actually, Sanjali, if you know what you said, I'll let you say it again. And I'll see if I can have my thought again.
Okay, sure. Well, I was saying that like in the beginning, it seemed like the individual was really focused on like reflective listening, but towards the end of it, he was like, okay, it seems like.
So here would be how I would, he doesn't, because of the time, right? He's promised that this will be quick. He does not spend a lot of time with all that content, right? He's got to keep this thing moving, so he doesn't listen too much. But here's where I actually, the thought that I had, what you hear at the beginning, and this, when people think of reflective listening, they often think mostly of empathy, because that is a big part of it, right? And in the beginning, it's all empathy. It's all, oh, I get it. Yeah, it was hard for you. You're super busy, your lifestyle, like just understanding. And it's all that empathy that gets him to calm down. Because once he gets into the second part of the interview, he's still using the exact same skill, but it doesn't feel as much like empathy. It feels like this selectively reinforcing certain ideas. Same skill, but because in the beginning, he's working with like that de-escalation and the I don't want to be here energy, he's just like understanding, like no agenda, just let this guy hear him out. Later, same skill, but it feels different. So I don't know if it was short, so it was different, but I think it would have felt different even if it had gone longer, because he's no longer just like just trying to be empathic. He's trying to do something. He's reinforcing certain things. Okay. All right. So unless there's another comment or something, let's switch gears into reflective listening, because that's going to be your next practice exercise, is going to be to get out there and test out reflective listening. Some of you, well, because you did your first mock interview, and I know it's a mock interview, it's not totally natural, it's not exactly what you sound like in real life. But so for some of you, reflective listening may not come naturally, right? In which case, that's going to be your practice exercises to, start testing it out, trying it out, kicking the tires, experimenting. Okay, so here's my presentation on reflective listening. The build up, it's so exciting. Not really that exciting. Okay, so In the 4th edition of the book, they're actually starting to call reflective listening just listening statements. So because why? Because they should be statements, right? Not questions. Okay, so we do this by, we're going to mirror back what's being said. We're going to be like a sounding board. Okay. They should be statements, not questions. They are a complex reflection, and I'll show you more about this, is a guess about another person's meaning. Right? So we never assume we understand or we know what somebody's saying, but we do try to guess because it's sort of an active position, like where you try to guess what they mean, you know? So it's not an assumption. And the other thing about reflections is that they work best when they are allowed to stand alone. Just mirror back what you heard and stop. I like to call that letting that reflection do its job. And its job is multiple. It does a lot of work. But one of them is it gives somebody an opportunity to hear themselves, right? Not to hear you, but to hear themselves. And that's actually where people's aha moments come from. You know, they're like, oh yeah, I really should, like they hear themselves and they're like, wait, is that really what I think? Am I really saying that? Am I really saying I don't need help at home? Or am I really saying it wouldn't be better if I had a little bit of help? So do that mirroring, let your reflections stand alone, do its job. So here's my animation. This is you. You are this mirror or this sounding board, and in comes a client statement. Once it gets to you, you have to make a choice. How are you going to respond? Okay, so with reflective listening, how are you going to return this statement? One choice you can make is to stay really close to what was originally said. We call this the repeat or the paraphrase, and it is a form of a simple reflection. Okay. Now, simple reflections, if you've ever had the experience on either receiving or giving, being on the receiving end of reflections or doing one, if somebody might say, why do you keep repeating everything I say? That can happen if you or someone else stays too close to the original statement. And what they're really saying is, they don't know what you want them to do next. It's not clear enough. So rather than that, if you make sort of a bigger guess about their meaning or their feelings, right? If you leave, don't stay so close, just kind of go off into left or right field, making more of a guess. We call those complex reflections. If you get it right, we call it accurate empathy, right? Like you were really understanding them. And so you guessed and you were right on. And they feel like, whoa, Sanjali really gets me, right? Yeah. And if you get it wrong, you get corrected, right? Nobody wants to be misunderstood. So if you make a guess and you're not correct, don't worry, they're going to correct you. Now, I do make the joke, if you get it wrong all the time, they may start to worry about you. Like, I don't know what Sanjali's problem is. Every time I say something, she comes back with, but that's only if you're getting it wrong all the time. That's not going to happen. People aren't really that complicated, right? With a little empathy, this stuff starts to make sense, right? Okay, so the other thing that people complain about when they do reflective listening is they say, I keep repeating what they say, but we don't go anywhere, right? And again, that's usually a sign that you're staying too close and they don't know what you want them to do next. Okay? So don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? Just stick with it. Keep experimenting. So I just started using this slide. This is the iceberg. So again, those simple reflections are just dealing with the words that were above the surface. right? But you can see there's a lot going on underneath the surface. And so a complex reflection is more of a guess about something, you don't have to go like way deep. You're not guessing about their childhood and, nothing like that. Just a little bit deeper, about, they're like, I don't want a caregiver. And you're like, it would feel weird to have somebody in your home. Even if they didn't say that's their issue, you could still guess it. And they're going to say, yeah. Or they're going to be like, well, no, that's not the issue. But it feels collaborative. It feels not like you're just a person asking questions like, oh, this is my job. I read questions. You answer them. That's your job. It's my job. That's your job. It feels like a conversation, right? Where you're trying to get to know them, trying to see from their perspective. So making that guess. For some people, it's really uncomfortable, like because in my experience, they worry about being wrong. Like, what if I'm wrong? Test it. And again, this is why I like to call life an experiment. Just experiment with it. See what happens. See if people get all bent out of shape about you being wrong. Mostly they won't. Mostly the fact that you're trying to understand where they're coming from. And, mostly. Okay. So then how do you form a reflection? The best approach is really just to grab a sentence stem. My personal favorite is sounds like, because once I've said it, I'm sort of forced to tell you what I think I heard, right? Sounds like you're kind of uncomfortable with having someone come in your house. Okay. So seems like, so you or you're uncomfortable. You're not sure if you want to let a stranger in your home. So, and then you could even, what I hear you saying is, well, even I probably wouldn't say that because they didn't actually, those weren't their words, but that's another reflected listening stem that you often will hear. I like to emphasize and point out just that essentially, because you are mirroring back what you're hearing them say, these are you statements, right? They don't have to start with the word you, but you're mirroring back what you heard them say, okay? So watch out for the word I. I actually like to discourage the use of the word I. Certainly, I discourage the phrase, I understand. Have you ever told somebody, I understand, just to have them come back and question you? Like, do you really understand? I understand it can be hard to smoke. Why, were you a smoker? Well, no, I was never a smoker, but I can understand. And they're like, no, you can't. Right? So I really encourage, like, you don't need the word I in most of these statements. Esther, did you want to say something? You can relate?
And I was thinking the other side also, and I actually thought unless you really feel that you understand, unless you lived it, because then it kind of can make the other person feel, oh, she does know, she's gone through it.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly that is a better situation to be in. And there might be reasons still not to do it, but yes, that is certainly better. And just remember, you don't need the I, because these are essentially just, you're a mirror, right? That's kind of the role. And it's actually a pretty good, nice role to be in. So let's do a couple of these. Like, can you put in the chat, can I get everyone to put a client statement, something that you deal with on a regular basis, or even something that you don't deal with on a regular basis, but that was really hard. You're like, oh my God, what do I say to that? Okay, so you can also write down what a client would say, but so Sanjali, that's a really nice reflection, right? Sounds like you're really frustrated with the housing agencies that you
Sorry, what was the question?
a statement that you hear a lot, like that's difficult.
Okay.
Okay. That's it, Jasmine, that's a great one. And yeah, maybe you hear it a lot, maybe it was just really difficult. I'm just too tired to call. That's what we got. Okay. Can we get a couple more? Okay, Glenda, that's a good one, right? I'm tired. Yeah. The healthcare system is broken, or some other like grand statement about, you know, corporate greed and the system and all that good stuff. Okay, so let's look at a few of these and let's experiment with some reflections. Let's start up there at the top with Jasmine's. It's just hard. So imagine I'm your patient and I say to you, it's just hard to manage everything I need to with how sick I've been. Okay, now I want you all to type out a reflection, but don't hit return yet. So I don't want to, we're going to wait a minute so everybody has a chance. So I say, it's just hard to manage everything with how sick I've been. It's just hard to, sorry. Uh-oh. It's just hard to manage everything with how sick I've been. Okay. Another couple more seconds or 10 more seconds. I see a lot of typing, so I'm gonna wait. Okay, so now that you wrote a response to that statement that I made, or Jasmine's statement that I pretended to say, go ahead and hit return and let's see some responses. Okay, it seems so. This one was way at the top. Or no, oh, it redoes it. It seems like you're having trouble managing everything due to your illness. Fair enough, right? See that it seems like it's difficult to deal with so many things. Being sick, Esther, very nice. It sounds like you've had a hard time focusing on other things due to your health. Excellent. These are really lovely. It seems like due to your hospitalization and since your health isn't stable, you're not well enough to fulfill certain tasks related to your health. Sanjali, I like it. Where are you? There you are. I like it. I might just, sometimes on my slide, I've got a little phrase that says short and sweet. So I might want to like cut out some of the words and use a few different, use words with fewer syllables, not because I'm questioning people's intelligence, just because it's less taxing on the brain, like that's why short and sweet can be so useful. But these are great. Jasmine, so Jasmine Sims says, I usually say, that's why I'm here to help, but I should probably say it can be challenging managing all your needs while not feeling well yourself. Yeah, right? Like, think about the difference in those two statements. I mean, of course, that's why I'm here to help is so nice. You'd think like, what could be wrong with that? It's so nice. But yet, mirroring back, it starts to form the relationship, you know, more than the other. But yeah, that's such a nice thing. That's why I'm here to help. You're like, yay, let's do this. Okay, let's do another one. So those were excellent. Hold on, now I have to go back and see if I can find the next one. Okay, I'm not really good with computers. I need help. Oh, this is a tricky one. This is kind of, this stirs the pot a little bit. I say that because I know a situation like this is just a call to action. Because I bet every one of you wants to say, I can help you do it. You know, like, they're like, I'm not good with computers. And you're like, that's okay, I can do it for you. You know, like it's a call to action. It's gonna make that, it's gonna trigger that writing reflex. The I can fix it. There's a solution to your problem. That's okay, we have a program where blah, blah, blah. Okay. Go ahead and post yours. If you've already done one, you can go ahead and post it. So Jasmine, just make sure, Jasmine Ortega, just a period at the end, right? Remember they're, I think you meant to, but right, but sometimes the only difference between a statement and a question is in your intonation. And so we just keep our intonation flat. But you had the stem, it's totally fine. It seems you may need additional technical support, which is completely understandable. That I like all these. You could even say, what about this one? Hold on, I want to go back to it, make sure what I say sounds right. I'm not really good with computers or calling, I need help. I might say, you've tried in the past. You know, like, again, partly fishing, you know, for more information, but it's a guess about meaning, right? They make this statement, and I'm guessing that they've tried in the past and it didn't work so well, right? So I just kind of put that out there, and it's going to get some kind of response. Like, I might get, no, I don't even have a computer because you know, like, no, I've never tried because I don't have a computer and blah, blah, blah. I might draw out something else. But again, part of the benefit is just in those small interactions, right? Not that it's not rocket science. I didn't like just solve the case and the person's now motivated, but I just engaged. I just kind of kept them hooked in, talking to me. I'm learning, and we're developing rapport along the way. Okay, hold on, Glenda. You know what? I wasn't either, but from, oh. Glenda, when you read that response, what would you, what do you think? Oh, you're muted, you're muted.
I don't know what I think.
Do you, so yeah, I think there's a big, it'd be easier, right? All the other statements feel like more like listening. This to me feels a little bit like problem solving, right? And remember, that was the first R, is to watch out for like seeing everything as a problem that needs to be fixed. And again, obviously you'll decide like, oh, is this a person that, you know, is never going to use a computer, and so I'm not even going to go there? Is this a person who, you know, could, with a little bit of support and encouragement, could master this. This is, they already do 12 things on their phone. You're just adding one, or is this a person who knows nothing, but either way, with reflective listening, right, we're not going to try to fix anything. We're going to just be responding to it. We're trying to navigate sometimes you're navigating difficult responses from people, just like in our video, right? The guy's really upset, and so you just keep mirroring back what you're hearing, right? Other thoughts or questions about reflections? One thing, I'm going to put something in the chat just so I can say something about it. So you see this one, Jasmine Ortega, I took yours, but I changed it a little bit. So you do a reflection. What I hear you saying is you have a hard time with technology. Okay. Jasmine, I'm just shortening it a little bit. Is that right? So I'm just telling you this up front. You don't have to ask, is that right? In the worst case scenario, people hear that and think all they want from me is to confirm or deny, right? Did I get that right? Yep. But that's actually not what you necessarily want when you're doing reflective listening, right? You want people to keep talking. You want this to turn into not a question and answer session. You want it to turn into a dialogue. So watch out for little questions like that, because you don't need them. Because remember, if you get it wrong, you will get corrected, right? If you get it right, the goal is to keep them talking. Sometimes people will still respond with just a yeah. And in those cases, I like to encourage people to what I call double down. Do it again. Try another reflection, maybe making a slightly different guess. Okay. Okay. We're at 11:24, so I just want to pause and then give a time for thoughts or questions. And if you want, I can also put the stems back on the screen, because this is what I usually say for your practice assignment is, like I said, is just to start experimenting with reflective listening. So grab these stems. You can make simple reflections and complex reflections. You can make, you can use the stems. You can see how long you can carry a conversation with just reflection. You can remember, you don't have to reflect everything you hear. You get to be selective, right? Because what you mirror back is likely what they're going to continue to talk about. So if you want to hear more about what a terrible experience they had with their last agency, mirror back some version of that and they will tell you more about it. But if you want to hear more about, a need for, to take care of some things at home, then mirror that side back and you'll hear more about that. Uh-oh. Yeah, Olivia, she's not here, so that's great. Her secrets have been revealed, and now when she does it, you'll be like, oh, we're on to you. We're on to you. Okay. So that's your practice exercise. And then it's the same thing. There's a little more to go through online, and then keep experimenting and then post about it. And then when we come back, we will do more of this. We'll start next week, still talking about reflective listening. Reflective listening tends to be the hardest skill for people to learn if it doesn't come natural, right? But it is very learnable. So, but it does take intention. You have to be intentionally trying to do it or you won't do it. You know, so far, just to put it in our toolkit, we started with sort of asking permission before giving information with the cheeseburger. That was one skill we've been playing with. We've got the eliciting change talk, which gets people to hear themselves say why they want to do stuff. And now we've got reflective listening. So this is sort of our third skill in our toolbox from the training. Okay. All right. I'm going to leave it with that. I hope you come, I look forward to hearing your experiences. And if you have questions and all that stuff, we can do that next week. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a good day.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thanks.